Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 on Monday, July 2nd, 2018. I am Dave Biddle, very happy to be joined by Patrick Murphy. Patrick, let's talk about freshmen that could contribute for Ohio State this fall. We'll go with true freshmen. Then we'll go with redshirt freshmen. I want to start with true freshmen. And obviously there's the new rule where, kids can play up to 4 games and still redshirt. I love that rule. I'm not just talking about kids that are going to play 4 games and hardly get in there. Guys we think could actually contribute this year as true freshmen. And I think there are a lot of them. Let's just maybe start on the offensive side of the football. I think Master Teague's an obvious one. Maybe Nick Pettit-Ferrer. I'm not saying he's going to be a starter. Neither is Master Teague, but those guys could both play as backups. Just maybe some guys on offense you think as true freshmen could play this year.
Yeah, I think those are both good ones. Obviously, we saw a good amount of Master Teague in the spring game, and we saw him a little bit in the open practices we were able to see. Looks like a stud at running back in the making. There's both guys in Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins coming back, so the snaps are going to be divvied up there. But with Antonio Williams transferring, that moves Master Teague up the depth chart a little bit, and we could see a third guy getting some snaps, maybe in junk time and whatnot, and then see how his role evolves throughout the season. Jeremy Ruckert, though, I think is a guy that definitely needs to see the field this year. They haven't had a tight end with his type of pass catching ability in a long time, and we've seen what happened when Urban Meyer has that type of athlete at that position, and what that can be offensively. I think just from seeing what this kid did in high school, the number 2 tight end in the country, according to our composite, he's a weapon that they haven't had, like I said, and that just gives another option to this offense and something the defense has to worry about. I know they have other guys that they like at that position, but I think you need to get him on the field, get him used to the college game, get him comfortable with Dwayne Haskins and the offensive line and whatnot, and start to build what could be a partnership between the quarterback and the tight end, like we saw against Oklahoma and Penn State last year. Get that going now as a freshman when he's still young, and get that rolling so that as you move into his sophomore and junior year, he's kind of a name people are already worried about. I think he could be very dangerous for this team. Another guy I'm interested in seeing, and I don't know how quickly he gets on the field, but a name that has kind of, the talk has slowed a little bit since he committed fairly early, is Jalen Gill, a local guy from Westerville that, a lot of talent. I think he could be that next really dangerous H-back. We've seen that position kind of change a little bit since Curtis Samuel left. Paris Campbell and KJ Hill are much more receiver types. They haven't carried the ball nearly as much as Curtis Samuel and Braxton Miller and Dontre Wilson did. But I think Jalen Gill could kind of get back to that more hybrid role. Like I said, behind the guys that he's on, DeMario McCall's still in that mix on the depth chart. I don't know how much he plays as a freshman, but I am really looking forward to him whenever he gets his opportunity.
Yeah, I agree with both those guys, Jeremy Ruckert and Jalen Gill. Those guys are not going to redshirt. They'll be out there, and they'll be out there for more than those 4 games, especially Ruckert.
Yeah.
We'll see about Gill, but I'm with you on Ruckert. He's going to be right in that mix. Looks like Luke Farrell's probably going to be the starter, but Rashad Berry's going to play a lot. Those are probably going to be the 2 main guys, but I think Ruckert's going to play a lot as that third tight end. If he can get past Jake Hausman, which I think Ruckert can do that. Brian Snead's probably going to play a decent amount for a 4th-string running back. You never know if a guy gets hurt, all of a sudden he's moving up the depth chart.
Right.
We'll see about him. Matt Baldwin is interesting to me, Pat, because I'm sure they want to redshirt him, but he's going to be the 3rd-string quarterback. He might be one of those guys where early on, like if they're blowing out Oregon State, obviously you want to get Tate Martell some playing time, but we might see Matt Baldwin, if his knee is okay, maybe even in the opener. I think they need to get him at least 1 or 2 games of experience early in case he's needed late, but you also don't want to burn all 4 games early in case he's needed late. Just Matt Baldwin is very intriguing because he's coming off the injury, but he's still going to be the 3rd-string quarterback. I'm sure they want to preserve the red shirt. The whole thing's just interesting to me.
Yeah, I think the injury is the biggest question. When we talked to him on signing day, it was very, vague about what the knee injury is. He said a couple times he's not going to go into specifics. Obviously, that was
it's an ACL.
It's an ACL.
Yeah. It's an ACL. Yeah.
So, how has he recovered by the time September comes around? Usually if it happens, happened his last game of his senior year in the state championship game. So you should be fine by then, but, you never know what kind of issues. He didn't do much in the spring. So, let's hopefully he's fully healthy then, and yeah, they can get him those 4 games. I do think as a third-string guy, maybe you do use those, a game or two, like you said early, to just get him out there and get him some experience. But yeah, it's interesting. Tate Martell hasn't played in a real game either, and he's your, true backup. So both those guys need to see some snaps early, and I think it'll be interesting to see how they kind of handle that situation, just to make sure you don't have quarterbacks coming into a game if something happens to Dwayne, where they've never played before. Though that worked out pretty well with Dwayne last year. So.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And let's look at the defensive side of the football. There could be a lot of true freshmen that play. I don't know how many are going to have huge impacts, but when I look at it, just looking down the list of some of the guys here, Teron Vincent, Tommy Togiai, Tyreek Johnson, Tyreek Smith, Tyler Friday, Josh Proctor, Dallas Gant, Taraja Mitchell. I mean, just on and on and on. Sevyn Banks could get in there. You just never know. Again, I'm not saying all those guys are going to have big impacts, but I think some of those guys could have relatively decent impacts. A guy like Tyreek Johnson can end up playing a decent amount. Josh Proctor, I thought Tommy Togiai looked great in the spring. Teron Vincent's the highest-rated member of this class. They're going to need one of the true freshman linebackers at least to round out the 2 deep. I don't know if that's going to be Taraja Mitchell, and he's a true middle linebacker. Dallas Gant enrolled early, so that helps him out. I mean, there's a lot of defensive guys. Again, I don't know they're going to play huge roles, but I think a lot of true freshman defensive players are going to see action for the Buckeyes this year, Pat.
Yeah, the nice thing that they've done defensively is figured out ways to rotate a lot of these positions. Obviously we talk a lot about it at defensive end and recently at corner, but the linebackers, we saw a decent amount of young players get in the game last year. Even at safety, they started out last year rotating 2 guys at one of the positions before Jordan Fuller locked it up over Eric Smith. So they've done a very good job defensively of making space for guys to step in, and if the young guys are talented enough, I think they will. Dallas Gant's a guy that I've heard a lot of positive things about after the spring. Obviously, we've talked before about how the middle or the linebacker position in general is one that needs, I think, the biggest upgrade this off season after some of the debacles we saw last year. Maybe that means turning to a true freshman who looks like he shows promise in the 2 deep and getting him involved in the games. They talked this spring about possibly rotating at linebacker to have the best 3 guys on the field for any given play. If Dallas Gant's a part of that, I think you could see a decent amount of him. But yeah, this defensive class is going to be full of studs. Obviously they need a safety too, and we can see a guy like Josh Proctor step in there. They mentioned him a lot during the spring workouts as a potential guy. Tyreek Johnson also. So I'm very interested to see the defensive line. They lost a lot in the end. They have plenty of depth in the middle. Does Teron Vincent with his talent, get in and get involved in the rotation there? I'll be interested to see. But this is a class that we could look back on offensively as well, but especially defensively, and be like, wow, that class really made an impact defensively, a few years down the road.
And redshirt freshmen, there's not a ton. I mean, there's guys obviously that are going to be needed to play. I mean, Josh Myers, at the very worst, is going to be the backup center. He's going to challenge Brady Taylor to be the starting center. Tate Martell is going to be the backup quarterback, and they're going to need to get him as much playing time as they can in blowouts to make sure he's ready if needed. Sean Wade's a guy that, if not for an injury, would have, probably played last year. I know he played a little bit at the beginning of the year, and then but he took a red shirt. Jerron Cage is a guy that gets forgotten about because there's so much good depth at defensive tackle with Draymond Jones coming back. He could have turned pro. And B.B. Landers is, to me, the most underrated player in the entire team. And then you got a bunch of, true freshmen that we talked about with, Teron Vincent and Tommy Togiai. They have Antoine Jackson. He's not even a freshman. He was in the recruiting class, too, the JUCO transfer, former Auburn 5-star. But, Jerron Cage is a guy that, as a redshirt freshman, I know the coaches like him. But just maybe some redshirt freshmen you think can make an impact for the Buckeyes this year.
Sean Wade was the first name that came to mind. He was a guy that, going into last year, I was excited, along with Jeffrey Okuda, to see play on that defense at some point. Both 5 stars, the top 2 cornerbacks in the country in last year's class. I think it's unfortunate that he went through the injury. Maybe that will end up being fortunate given his eligibility. But if things go as planned, he's going to leave as soon as he can to head to the NFL. I think he's that talented. And obviously, they just lost a good one in Denzel Ward. I think we're still questioning what Kendall Sheffield is, what Damon Arnett is. We saw some flashes from Jeffrey Okudah. Can Shaun Wade, after watching for most of last year as he recovered from that injury, step in and be a factor right away? If he can, I think they're going to be in very good hands. I think then you have 4 guys that maybe you're feeling confident about. Tage, I agree. I think he's another guy that hasn't been talked about quite a bit. Again, that depth at defensive tackle, where does he fit in there? But the 14th ranked defensive tackle in the country last year was on there, was recruited for them for a reason, and I think they like what they've seen from him. Those are the 2 big ones, besides I think the obvious ones that you mentioned, like Tate Martell and Josh Myers. It'll be interesting. I think the fact that these guys have had a year to watch and be involved in practice and just kind of experience that. It's like the guys that enroll early. That experience is invaluable now that you're going to be playing, and I think you've seen a lot of times that those guys can kind of be a difference maker more so than maybe the true freshmen do, as they kind of still adjust to the speed of things and just being a college student, being away from home, all of the stuff that goes along with that.
Great stuff as always from my guy Patrick Murphy. Thank you very much, Patrick, and thanks to all the listeners out there for tuning into the show. I appreciate it. Hope you have a great day. Let's hear that Buckeye swag, best damn band in the land.